Which video game franchise should be revived? Look up Battle for Middle-earth, Reforged. It's a fan project that has been in the works for a couple of years now with a whole new engine. I think they are planning to release a beta sometime soonish, as far as soon can be soon with a project that takes multiple years. Oh god, the moment I saw this thread I thought of C&C. If it's any consolation, there's official mod support coming for OpenRA on C&C Remastered. It's currently in alpha for Tib Dawn and I cannot wait. Every single C&C up to Kane's Wrath has just been wonderful in my eyes. Truly amazing games. Burnout was a racing series, but a significant part of gameplay was causing other racers to crash. Fully destructible cars and environments. There was even a play mode where you got to launch your car down some sort of ramp, varies a bit by map, and into traffic, and you get points by causing the greatest amount of damage. Very fun. Edit, geez guys, I'm glad so many other folks enjoyed this. I am humbled by the awards, kind strangers, Black Heart. I would love another proper Burnout. Burnout 3 was, without question, the best racing game on the PS2, and 4, Dominator and Paradise were also all very solid titles. But EA just decided to move the Burnout developers onto the Need for Speed series. After all, why have two different arcade street racers, right? And sure, some of the titles Criterion made for the series, such as Hot Pursuit, were well received, it's just not the same. Need for Speed is what happens when a game publisher watches a bunch of car modders doing donuts in a Tesco car park, after watching a Fast and Furious movie, and tries to replicate it in video game form. Yes, mechanically it's similar to Burnout, but all of the aesthetics are different. Need for Speed was baked into real-world cars and modding, along with some R&B/hip-hop/grime/dubstep, and a bunch of dodgy 20-somethings evading the cops because family or whatever. Burnout was not that. Burnout was pure arcade fun. There was no story, there was no effort to capture an aesthetic or pander to a subculture like Need for Speed. Burnout just had a rock soundtrack and wanted you to have fun. There were no characters, no story, no real-world cars or worrying about car specs or customization. It was just purely here's the car, head for the road, here's your opponents, turn the radio up and enjoy. It's that aesthetic difference that matters. I never cared for Need for Speed because I was never into the whole car modding/illegal street racing scene. But Burnout was just arcade fun with a soundtrack I could rock out to, and I wish it had got a true sequel after Paradise. Gran Turismo 4 was the best PS2 racer for sure. It took everything that was good about GT2 and brought it back and gave the cars a more realistic feel than 3 had. But Burnout 3 was the best arcade racer without question. Another one in a similar vein was San Francisco Rush, but that only got a N64 release. Technically San Francisco Rush was on all the 6th gen consoles, it was in one of the Midway arcade collections. I agree GT4 was great. Still the best of the entire series. I preferred Burnout 3 though, that arcade style still gets me today. It was also better on Xbox, prettier, better resolution, better online. Revenge also got a prettier 360 port. Revenge isn't as good as 3, but still a fantastic game. I feel like no open world racing games have ever really worked well except for the Forza Horizon games, which are great and the best arcade style racing around these days. But they aren't really an arcade racing game in the way that Burnout was, and nothing else really does that. I really didn't care for Burnout Paradise personally. I felt it lost a lot of what made the previous games great. 3 and Revenge were just fantastic, especially on Xbox, as Revenge got a 360 version too. Dominator and Paradise were mostly recycled content from what I remember, but I mean if you're gonna recycle content you can do worse than recycling stuff from Burnout 3. I've tried a bunch of the Need for Speed games and just could never get into them. Hot Pursuit was clearly inspired by Burnout and was made by Criterion, but it's like a soulless version of Burnout. If we get another Burnout ever again, I want it to be level-based, not open world. Paradise's biggest failure was that it made all of its main races end at 1 of 8 points. The map as a whole is really solid, but that's meaningless when so many races have you basically get onto the same 5 or 6 hub roads then follow them around to the same ending as other races. If the races occurred on closed routes around the map, or were checkpoint based, such as somewhere with the DLC, the races would have been much more satisfying. Burnout was finishing work at the supermarket at 2 p.m. on Saturday as a kid, buying a crate of beer and spend the rest of the day with friends crashing cars and not worrying about a thing. No other game could ever get close to that. Need for Speed was baked into real-world cars and modding, along with some R&B/hip-hop/grime/dubstep. There was no effort to capture an aesthetic or pander to a subculture like Need for Speed. Burnout just had a rock soundtrack. Not sure why you think hip-hop and R&B soundtracks are pandering to a subculture, but rock soundtracks aren't? Different people like different music. If you don't like the choice of music in NFS, that's fine. But just cause a game decided to use a genre that you're not personally into, doesn't make it pandering. Rock isn't the default, it's just another type of music. The Need for Speed games didn't get cheesy like that until Underground. Hot Pursuit 1 and 2 were both tons of fun though, but running from the cops was the whole shtick of the game. Underground is the FNF ripoff that never needed to happen. I love both the old NFS and Burnout titles. NFSU was the first NFS I played and was good, and NFSU 2 was better. Sure, I've never been back to them and probably wouldn't care about that aesthetic now, but at the time, being about 12, and being a fan of FNF and watching Pimp I Ride all the time, they were both really popular at school. Shout out Juiced from that time as well. I'd burn out, pardon the pun, on NFS by Carbon, but it is pretty mad that NFS was getting new titles year after year and Burnout fell by the wayside. There has to be some room for cross-pollination on the two arcade franchises to at least offer a new Burnout every so often. Obviously manufacturers won't want you smashing their models up, so the cars will need new skins, but another Burnout instead of an NFS would probably freshen up both franchises. Underground 2 was one of my favorite games growing up. Had the craziest customizations you could make, awesome music track, and was an all-around fun game. Burnout was what GTA is now. Nobody cares about the storyline or the actual game, and the developers figured that out so quickly, hence the inclusion of the crash mode where the entire point was to cause as much damage as possible. You just want to drive around city streets, cause mayhem, and piss yourself laughing at the most hilarious multi-car crashes and explosions you can set up. And both are really just The Sims in disguise. Where you get intensely involved in the part that least resembles actual life, i.e. getting to design and build a house you could never afford, but tune out of the actual gameplay, which is boring because it's like watching yourself be you. Who the fuck wants to be stuck in traffic at home and on the way to work? I hate all the NFS games after Porsche Unleashed. After that the gameplay was kind of garbage and it took all the fun out of the series. Hot Pursuit 2 was the title that killed my interest in the franchise because giving the cops a warp drive really left a bad taste in my mouth. There were few things more frustrating than blowing by a cop standing still while at triple-digit speeds only to have them slingshot right behind you seconds later. If this doesn't happen in the next few years, then Konami is just leaving money on the table. The last few Resident Evil games, of which 7 and 8 bear some definite PT inspiration, prove that AAA horror games can be successful and massively lauded, and considering the fact that SH and RE are basically the two titan OG horror franchises, I think developers would want to pick up the gauntlet that Capcom has essentially thrown down. I scrolled a lot looking for this. I'm playing the 2010 Forgotten Sands currently, and it brought back the times when I used to play Two Thrones and Warrior within about 7 years ago. It's such a fun game with a decent story, combat and graphics, but the best part for me is the parkour. I'd love a remake with a different storyline. I feel like this is seriously missing from Nintendo's lineup right now. He has more character development and usage in Smash Bros. Than in his own games. The new Yoshi game is good, Kirby game is good, Mario games are good, Zelda games are good. Where are the Star Fox games? Me, studio behind games like Call of Duty Mobile owned by Tencent, and Konami recently made a mobile game called Contra Returns, but even as an avid mobile game I can't recommend it. Just a cash grab and doesn't remind you of the original game much. Sad. Although you can emulate it. They've announced a new one. It's just like 8 years away still. There's no release date. All we know is that some other space game is coming out first, and that game isn't due out for like 2 more years. But there is another Elder Scrolls game on the way. Eventually. So many of Conker's contemporaries need to just be remastered and re-released. What a great time for video games. I know it would take time, money and manpower, but there is no way they wouldn't massively profit from this. Give me all of the nostalgia. Mainly because Konami went insane, and just about every one of their experienced developers has quit and moved to a new company by now. Even if there were to be a new Castlevania, you wouldn't want to play it if Konami made it. And no one else is going to make it because Konami would probably put prohibitive time and budget restraints on it. Bloodstained is good, though. It's Castlevania in all but name.